As dads, some days we feel like we have all the answers, and some days we feel like we don't have a clue. If that describes you, you're at the right place. This is the All Pro Dad Podcast. Hey, I'm your host, Ted Lowe, and each week on the All Pro Dad Podcast, we ask just one question. We talk about what we've gotten wrong mostly, and occasionally we'll talk about what we've gotten right. We talk about what the experts say, and then at the end of every episode, we give you just one simple but powerful pro move. Today, I'm so excited. I am joined by two of my heroes, Mr. Mark Merrill, the founder of Family First, and legendary football coach, Tony Dungy. Thank you for being here, sir.
Hey, thank you, Ted. Thanks for having me back. Excellent.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
we will have
Ted.
him anytime. We'll have both you guys anytime. This is great. Share how many kids and grandkids you guys have.
Well, we have 11 children, no grandkids yet, but when they come, I think they're going to be coming in a wave here, but 11 kids, and they've been a blessing.
And Tony, you could probably go very quickly from 11 kids to 11 grandkids. Like, it's not going to be one or two at a time. It's going to go.
Once it starts, I think the floodgates are going to open.
Yeah,
yes.
well, we've been blessed with 5 kids and 2 grandkids, ages 4 and 1. And so Susan, who is Marmy, that's her name, and I'm Pop. So it's
Marmy
awesome.
And Pop. Is that as great? It's being a granddad as great as I've heard.
It really is. No question about it.
You don't have to parent them. You don't have to teach them anything you've learned on the All Pro Dad Podcast.
It's pure joy.
It's just pure joy. We're going to break all the rules. I love that. Well, each week we have the question of the week. And the question of this week is, can you really balance work and family? And this is a very popular question because the search term, can you balance work and family? It brings up over, what is that? Is that $1 billion?
It's billions. That looks like 1.64 billion. It's probably over 2 billion now.
Oh, that is unbelievable. Why all the interest, you guys? Why do you think this is such a topic?
Well, I think our world, our society, the way we do things, that work is attacking that balance and making it very, very difficult. I can remember growing up in a little automotive town, Jackson, Michigan, and most of the guys worked in the auto industry. And so you worked 8 hours. Now you could work second shift or third shift, graveyard shift, but you basically had 8 hours. If you needed a little extra money, maybe you worked 2 hours overtime, but that's it. It was an 8-hour day and the rest of your day was family. Well, that has gone by the wayside. And I know from working in the football industry, there are long days, especially during the season. And we just feel like, boy, we got to give more and more and more to work. And that gives you less and less time for the family. And you have to be very intentional about trying to keep that balance.
And mom and dad today, unlike years gone by, are both working today. And so we find the majority of families that mom and dad are in the workplace. And so that adds to that challenge and that stress as well.
Mark, you wrote a very popular article about this, and you have a different take about the whole work-life balance. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, it was, I think the blog was entitled, Stop Trying to Balance Work and Family Life.
Were you saying you can't do it?
You can't do it. You can't do it, really, realistically. And really the premise was, I gave a word picture, and the premise was that there was this guy named the Great Walenda. Remember him, Tony, from Florida,
yes.
Down south of my hometown, I believe, in Venice, Florida. And he did the tightrope and the high wires, and he crossed the Grand Canyon, right? And so he was crossing the Grand Canyon on this tightrope. And if he fell off, if he fell off to one side, he's going to die. If he fell off the other side, he's going to die. And so there was always this tension. If you watched him walking across the Grand Canyon, there's an immense amount of tension when he was grabbing that balance bar, and then he made it across. But it was always a struggle getting there. And that's kind of like life. Do we want to always have this tension as we balance work and family life, or is there a different way?
And what's the different way?
I think the different way is you have to be intentional about taking care of work when it is necessary, and then taking care of the family. And I looked at it as a football coach of scheduling, because when you are practicing, you schedule everything out. Okay, we've got individual period, we've got team period, passing drills, offensive drills, defensive drills, warm-ups, everything is scheduled. Well, if I want to have that type of family life, I've got to schedule that too and be intentional about it. And it's never, as Mark is saying, it's never going to be exactly 50-50. Sometimes it is going to get tipped over when you've got assignments at work. But then you've got to balance that out by saying, okay, when it's not, I'm going to give some extra time to the family and let them know, yeah, hey, you're low on the schedule here because Dad has to be at work. But trust me, that's going to balance out. That's going to come back.
And I see it as there's different seasons of life. As Tony said, where on some seasons, and I'll say this like with Tony, I'm sure some seasons during the football season when you were coaching, that was pretty intense. And you had to be at the office more than you perhaps wanted to be. But you made it happen. And you realized, okay, after the season then, that I'm going to be able to spend more intentional time. That was a season where you're spending more time with your family and kids. Now, that doesn't mean you're just working 24/7 and doing everything at work, because you did some things where you had family days on Saturday and some other things, and you made sure you were there for your kids during the season. But it can be a challenge. And I think the one thing is to first of all, be aware that there are different seasons of life where, and it might just be a week, or it might be a month, or it might be 3 months, or it might be a year, where you're having to spend more time at work or more time with families or kids. When a child is going through a challenge or your marriage is going through a struggle, there might be a need to have more focus there. So that's why we talk about it. It's not just a daily balance where you say, okay, well, I'm going to allocate this many hours to family and this many hours to work, because it's very difficult to do.
So are you saying it's not as much a daily balance as it is a seasonal balance, what do you guys think about?
I think it's intentional timing. And then also, if you're in a job where it does require a lot of time, then you've got to maximize that time that you are home. For us, Mark, talked about our schedule during the football season when I was coaching. Friday afternoon and Friday evening were always the kids' time, because Dad was tied up during the week a lot, working late. Some Saturdays and Sundays we had road games. I'm not even there. I'm traveling. So we knew Friday afternoon and evening after school, was the one time that I was definitely going to be there with the kids. But we would let them pick out, what do you want to do? And that was their day. And they knew, okay, Dad might not be here Wednesday night, Thursday night, but Friday night, he's going to be here and we get to do what we want to do. And it was always special for them. I remember we were playing Super Bowl 41 in Miami, and Friday night, they wanted to go to the NFL Experience, this big, kind of circus, at the Super Bowl site. And I can remember people walking around, that looks like the coach of the Colts, but what would he be doing here? They got a game here coming up. But that was their Friday, and we weren't going to change, even though it was a Super Bowl. They got to pick what they wanted to do.
Yeah, and so as Tony was saying, we need to be aware that there are different seasons, but also within the seasons, we need to be creative. And so Tony had that creativity during the Super Bowl. Tony had that creativity when he had Family Day on Saturdays, when players and coaches could bring their families to the facility even before a game the next day. And I remember I had the same thing with my dad. My dad was a hard worker. He was often at the office, but at the same time, he was there when he needed to be there for us. And also each Saturday, he would take us to his office and we would have a great time at his law office. It wasn't a football field like Tony's kids got to experience. It was a law office, but it was really fascinating and probably prepared me then in the future to become a lawyer.
My dad was a science teacher, and I can remember the same thing, going up to his office on Saturday, looking through the microscope, looking at things that he was creating. And there was nothing more fun in the world to me than looking through my dad's microscope and looking around at his office building. And I'm sure he's saying, I'm in here all the time and it's no big deal. But for us, it was a big deal, and it was fun to be there. Probably half the fun being because you are with Dad.
I think a real key here is to realize that we can probably do more things with our kids, even during those busy work seasons, than we think, if we just get a little creative. So again, be creative, take your kids to work if you can. Now, there may be some instances like in a factory or somewhere else where you can't bring your kids, but that doesn't mean you can't do some of the same things. If you're going for a walk after work, take your child with you. If you're going for a bike ride, if you're going to the gym to work out, take them with you. If you're going to the home improvement store, take your child with you, even during those busy seasons of life.
Some of my most fond, it was routine. It was scheduled. We used to go feed the ducks at North Lawn Gardens in Jackson, Michigan. And I can remember early in the mornings on the weekend, getting the bread and chopping it up and throwing it to the ducks, going to walks. My dad would take me to football games and basketball. He knew I liked that. So, hey, we're going to go to University of Michigan football game and I'm going to take you. And it was special. But 60 years later, I remember those mornings.
In one thing, and we're going to get some hate mail from kids from this, but what we used to do is on Saturday mornings, as our kids were growing up, we used to bring them out in the yard and we would do some yard work. And work is a good thing, and it's important for our kids to learn about work. And we would do things, and every time my kids knew that I was going to give a life lesson. So when we're pulling the weeds out of the ground there, each of them are pulling the weeds. I said, hey, kids, why are we pulling the weeds out? Well, we've got to get all the bad stuff out of our lives so the good stuff can grow, good. Dad. And so they still remember that to this very day. I'm hoping they teach that to their kids too.
And I think it's important to do those things and, yes, do the things that we want to get across to them. But it's also important to spend some time doing the things that they like. And I can remember my boys, hey, Dad, would you play Madden with me? Well, on Saturday, that's the last thing I want to do is play some more football. Yeah. But okay, you want to do it? Hey, we're gonna play a game just because that's something you want to do.
It's so good.
That's the proverbial hammer on the nail of the head. I mean, that is great, Tony. And I'm glad you shared that, because that's something that we as dads, sometimes we go, well, let's take our son or our daughter to do this, or this. So things that we want to do or things that we need to do, instead of getting to their world. And it's like, what do you want to do today? And, there's so many times when the most important things that my kids remember now were the simplest things that we did then. Yes. And those weren't going to an amusement park, and it wasn't taking this big trip or this long vacation. It was doing the simple thing. It might have been digging holes in the backyard or hunting for lizards outside.
Right.
It was just the simple things and the basic things of life that they remember today.
I love that.
That came through to me loud and clear. Many years ago, I was being honored in San Antonio. This fatherhood group gave me a Father of the Year award. So I'm thinking I got to give a talk. Let me ask my son, Eric, hey, give me something really memorable I can talk about that we did together that I can, use in my speech. And he said, well, and at this time, I mean, he's been on the sideline with me. He's gone to Super Bowls. He's done all this stuff. So I'm thinking it's going to be one of those type of stuff. He said, Dad, remember when we had to move and all the toys, everything was still boxed up? We made a baseball out of tape and we played with the broomstick, and I beat you in tape baseball 22-3. That's the best time I've ever had. And I thought about that, and I told that story at that event. It's not the grandiose things. It's not the cruises. It's not the vacation time. It's that tape baseball in the backyard because you were available. He wanted to play, and you said, okay, let's go. That's what they remember.
And because we can feel, I know I can spend a lot of energy trying to think of stuff to do with my kids. I have always had that value. Like, I'm going to spend time with them, and I'll go through. And finally I learned, let me ask them. And it was typically way less than what I was thinking. I was usually kind of relieved. Like, oh, they want to play kickball. Great. Yeah. I could jump on the trampoline. It seems like you guys are talking about, hey, bring them into your world as much as you can, and then get into their world as much as you can. So, because I was thinking about when you guys are talking about taking them to work, sometimes I think our kids don't understand what's taking us away from them. And there's something about inviting them into that I think, wow, that's powerful, that this is what Dad does. And I think that's powerful.
And part of it is they just want to be with you. And like I was telling you about going to my dad's science class. Well, the last thing I would want to do would go back to school. Who wants to go to a schoolroom? But I did want to be with my dad. I wanted to see what he did. And so that was fun to me. Now, if somebody would say, hey, let's go to a classroom and just sit in there and I'd say, are you crazy? But to do it with my dad, yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's fun. And I remember even here at Family First, doing this 33 years, and my kids were younger. And I remember bringing my kids here to the office one by one and just making them president up for the day. And they would sit at my desk and I would sit on the other side of the desk, and we would just work. And it was fun. And they did whatever they did. They draw pictures. And I have actually, to this day, I have probably 15 to 20 drawings of crayons, pictures of various things right outside my door that are still hanging up. And then other team members whose kids come into the office as well, they've drawn me pictures as well. And those are all posted there. So I have a whole art gallery right outside my office.
That's what it's about, right? What's some other creative tips that you guys can give? I love this. You're talking about being aware. You're talking about being creative, talking about being present. What else, Mark? Any thoughts, Coach, on some additional things that could help dads to do this? Because as you're talking, I'm thinking, I travel and speak, and since they were little, I would bring a kid with me. Like I would tell the people bringing me in, I'm probably not going to bring the person you want to bring, which is my wife, because most of the time it was marriage events. So I'd bring our kids, and that's their fondest memories. What are you guys? Any other thoughts?
I could say, in unison with the B's, being aware, being creative. I'd also say be united. And that would be united with your spouse, that you guys are aligned on, okay, this is a season that we're going through where I need to spend more time at the office, and here's what my schedule is going to look like. And let's make sure we're aligned with that. We coordinate it. So we're preparing for that. It just doesn't come upon us, and then we start scrambling around. And then the other B would be present. Yeah. The greatest present we can give our kids is to be present. And so that means to be all in wherever we are. We need to be all in at work. We need to be all in at home. And so that means when we are at home, when it is that season, we're able to spend more time with our kids, more time with our family, is to be present. What does that mean? We all know it means the phone, we set it down and we give it a timeout, and we spend time with our kids. It's uninterrupted by anyone and anything.
It's so good. And then let me ask you guys about that. That leads to the question of boundaries. How have you guys set boundaries with people outside your family that they know that this is time with my family?
Yeah. And again, I think it comes down to scheduling and being on top of things. And as I said, when I was a coach, and if we had 10:05 on Wednesday as individual period, it doesn't matter what else is going on in the world, that nothing is going to stop individual period from 10:05 to 10:15. That's what we're going to do. And that's what our players expected. So you've got to have that same type of thing. When this is family time, that's important. For me, we kind of schedule that in June, July, and August. During the season, in the fall, I'm working. In the winter, that's when I kind of try to take my speaking engagements and do my public service stuff. But when we get to June, I kind of tell people, I'm sorry, it may be a good cause. I just can't do it, because we have shortchanged my family to a certain extent during the football season. So now when they're off, when the kids are out of school, June, July, August, I can't afford to take engagements and be away. And just, that's the way it is. And we got to really stick to that.
And I can tell you, Tony does stick to that, and he does live it out, which I greatly respect. We had talked about this a little bit before, but our calendars are critical. And so at Family First, if you look at my calendar, you see it full of meetings, full of commitments. And on that same calendar, as my children were growing up, on my Outlook calendar, I clearly had different blocks for different kids for different reasons. I had family night dinner blocked. I had carpooling kids to school. I had that time blocked. I had my kids' birthdays blocked for that day. That was their birthday date. They knew that on their birthday, that was a day that I had committed to them, and I would do something that entire day, whatever they wanted to do on their birthday. So again, when someone asks me, can you do this that morning? Can you do this Tuesday evening or another night? I would say, let me look at my calendar. And I'd look at it and go, nope, that doesn't work. And because it was an important appointment with one of my kids or my wife or my family that I was not going to break. And I'm going to treat that as an extremely important business meeting.
I love that. Well, I think people are listening, maybe going, well, you don't get my life. You don't get how busy I am. And I'm like, I'm kind of sandwiched between two guys that are very driven, that have gotten a lot of things done, yet not miss their family because of it. And so, first of all, thank you guys for modeling that, not only, for your kids, but for a lot of other dads, a lot of other people watching. And so I think that's a great transition into the pro move of the week. What about you guys? If you were encouraging one dad, and I want you to think about the dad that's maybe always feeling guilty about one side or the other, what would you say to him?
I would say the pro move of the week, look at your calendar, look at the entire week, what it looks like, look at how much time you have available for your kids. Make sure you maximize that when you can. And then don't feel bad about it if it's a small amount of time. But if it is a small amount of time, make sure I'm going to be available and I'm going to be with them these 20 minutes, these 40 minutes, this hour, whatever that is. I'm going to maximize that and look at that calendar and spell it out and then stick to it.
Yeah, I'm going to put an exclamation point after what Tony said on calendaring those things and calendaring that time with your kids and to keep that time. And I'm going to then go back also to my pro move would be creative. And it's what Tony and I shared about being creative. When you're at work, have your kids join you if you can. But then also be creative in making sure that you ask them what they would like to do during the time that you have with them, and you'll be surprised at the answers and sometimes just how simple the things that they want to do are.
I love this. So practical and so helpful. You guys, thanks again for modeling that and living that out. And thanks to all of you who are listening. We know you and your kids will be glad you did. Thanks for listening to the All Pro Dad podcast. All Pro Dad is the fatherhood program of the nonprofit Family First. Along with our motherhood program, iMom, we exist to help you love your family well. Subscribe to our daily email, the All Pro Dad Play of the Day, by going to allprodad.com/subscribe and get daily powerful and practical fatherhood tips in your inbox. The All Pro Dad podcast is hosted by me, Ted Lowe, produced by Bobby Lewis.